Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're heading straight to the front lines of a high stakes battle that honestly affects every single one of us. We're talking about the incredible clash of wildlife conservation, intense human impact, and some seriously cutting edge forensic science. We hear about the biodiversity crisis all the time in these really abstract terms, but to actually grasp what's happening to our planet, we need to get our hands dirty. We need to look at the real survival stories playing out right now in the dirt and the trees. So we're going to examine exactly how altering our landscapes threatens unique species, and more importantly, how human ingenuity is fighting back. To kick things off, I want you to picture a scene in the greater Mekong region of Southeast Asia. The year is 2010. A conservation biologist stops dead in their tracks, catching a fleeting glimpse of a lizard scurrying across a rocky outcrop. This is the psychedelic rock gecko. And let me tell you, the description is wild. It literally looks like it was painted with vibrant neon colors. It was this miraculous discovery that just goes to show how much of our world is still totally uncharted. But contrast that incredible, vibrant beauty with this rather terrifying number: 8 square kilometers, or just about 3 square miles. That is the entire known habitable universe for the psychedelic rock gecko. It's restricted to a single tiny island in southern Vietnam, and it faces a massive overarching threat. See, Vietnam is experiencing immense tropical deforestation right now to make room for agriculture and a booming population. And when an entire species relies on a space smaller than a typical city neighborhood, a single human alteration to that landscape, well, it can literally spell extinction. Section 1. The threat of habitat loss. Saving a unique woodpecker. So that 8 square kilometer island? It represents a much, much larger global crisis. Habitat loss is, hands down, the single greatest threat to biodiversity across the entire biosphere. And it isn't just about, paving over a forest for a parking lot. It's really any alteration. We're talking agriculture, logging, or even just disrupting natural fire cycles. When habitat gets fragmented into these little isolated patches, the species living there have nowhere left to go. Their populations shrink, they lose genetic diversity, and they get sucked into this extinction vortex that is just incredibly difficult to escape from. Which brings us to a really fascinating case study. Meet the red-cockaded woodpecker, a bird found exclusively in the southeastern United States. Now, unlike most woodpeckers that nest in dead, rotting wood, which makes sense, right? It's softer, this specific bird actually drills its nest cavities straight into mature, living longleaf pine trees. Why on earth would they do that? Well, because when they drill into living pines, the tree oozes sticky resin all the way down the trunk. And this resin acts as a brilliant natural defense mechanism, literally repelling predators like tree-climbing corn snakes that want to eat the bird's eggs. It's a highly specialized, totally brilliant survival strategy. But here's the catch. This also perfectly illustrates the exact habitat struggle these woodpeckers face. The bird doesn't just need living pines, it needs a perfectly clear flight path to its feeding grounds. Historically, natural periodic fires would sweep through these forests, burning away all the low-lying brush, but leaving those big, mature pines completely intact. But as human development spread, we naturally suppressed those fires, which caused the undergrowth to grow incredibly thick. The moment that brush gets higher than 4.5 meters, it ruins their flight paths, and the woodpeckers will actually completely abandon their carefully constructed, resin-coated homes. So how do we fix it? Well, because we finally understood this very specific microhabitat, conservationists realized they could save them. But we couldn't just put up a fence, we had to actively intervene. We protected the remaining forests, we brought back controlled fires to intentionally clear out that 4.5-meter undergrowth, and this is the crazy part, biologists actually went in and artificially drilled new cavities themselves. It takes a woodpecker months to excavate a living pine, so we basically gave them a head start. And guess what? It worked. Out of 20 test sites, woodpeckers colonized 18 of them. It's absolute proof that targeted human intervention can actually reverse the damage. Moving on to Section 2, DNA forensics in conservation. Unfortunately, destroying a species' home isn't the only way we threaten biodiversity. Sometimes the threat comes from directly targeting the animals themselves. Overharvesting is a massive global issue, and it is especially devastating to large animals that have very low reproductive rates. A perfect example of this is the African elephant. Driven by the illegal ivory trade, elephant populations have faced just catastrophic declines. And international bans, often they just drove the hunters underground, leading to rampant, highly organized illegal poaching. To stop it, scientists realized they couldn't just act like biologists anymore. They had to track poachers just like a cartel unit. Enter ecological forensics. The process to track them sounds straight out of a thriller movie. First, researchers painstakingly traveled all across Africa, collecting samples of elephant dung. Why? To isolate mitochondrial DNA and build a massive, comprehensive genetic reference map. Then came the sting. In 2002, authorities in Singapore intercepted a massive illegal shipment of severed ivory. Scientists managed to extract DNA directly from those smuggled tusks and matched it right back against their dung reference map. This allowed them to pinpoint exactly where those elephants were killed, down to just a few hundred kilometers. And let me tell you, the data from that DNA match was an absolute bombshell. The genetic tracking proved that the slaughtered elephants mostly came from a relatively narrow band centered right in Zambia. But when they analyzed the numbers, researchers discovered something shocking. Poaching rates in that specific region were actually 30 times higher than anyone had previously estimated. 30 times! This was undeniable, hard forensic evidence, and it forced a massive policy shift, stimulating the Zambian government to drastically step up their anti-poaching efforts. Which leads us to Section 3, the future of our biosphere. You know, after hearing all this, you might be asking yourself, why do we go to such great lengths? Why spend months drilling holes in pine trees or mapping DNA from elephant dung? Well, it really comes down to a concept called biophilia, coined by the famous biologist E.O. Wilson. Biophilia is our deep, innate, evolutionary affinity for the natural environment. Think about it. We literally evolved in ecosystems rich in biodiversity. Our brains, our survival, our entire history are woven into the fabric of nature. So our desire to save a tiny rainbow-colored gecko isn't just about logistics. It's a reflection of our profound, hardwired connection to all forms of life. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway of this explainer. The biosphere is changing, there is no doubt about it, and human development is accelerating that change. But as we've seen through targeted habitat management and some incredible DNA forensics, sustainable development and active conservation are absolutely possible. We can improve human lives while still sustaining our ecosystem processes. So I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative question to chew on. As our landscapes rapidly change, what are you willing to do to preserve the biodiversity we are so fundamentally connected to? Think about your own ecological footprint and your unique role in the biosphere. Because honestly, the survival of the next magnificent species might just depend on it.